Okay, welcome back to game 2. After a quick game 1, Michael Pramawat is leading Jason Klaczynski 1-0 in the series, and we'll see if Jason can rebound and take the next 2 games here with Durant. So the first game, he really didn't get a second Durant into play. He does open with a Durant and a Collector this game, however. So this game is going to play out very differently, I would hope. So Jason will take a look through his deck. I'm sure this search will take a while because he wants to make sure no crucial cards are prized, and if they are, he'll have to decide what he wants to do. He does play Rotom to try to Mischievous Trick and get those cards out of the prizes, so he's going to take a long look through his first search. Now, Michael did start with Cleffa here, which is probably the best starter he could have. It has a free retreat cost, so it doesn't have a liability at all against Durant, and he'll be able to Eek if he has a bad start. He'll also be able to retreat right away to something like Thunderous if he wants to. So, really good start here. Let's see if he has anything to back it up. Looks like he's got a Judge and a Communication, so nothing too great, but starting with that Cleffa is always a good thing. Let's see, Jason does grab one Durant. He's got to see if any are prized. Of course, one of the biggest hurdles when you're playing Durant is having them prized. Anytime you have one or even two prized, that can be very devastating. It makes your Devours very weak. When you're only discarding 2 or 3 cards as opposed to 4, over the course of the game that adds up very quickly. And he actually only grabs a single Durant. So that means 2 are prized, and that's not good. So I saw there's a Cabalion in his deck. I'm not sure why he didn't take that as well. He must have Rotom in his hand. If he doesn't have Rotom, okay. I was going to say, if he doesn't have Rotom, this game is going to be ugly. Without Rotom, you can't really access your prizes unless you start taking them. So, he just kind of would have been devouring for 2 the whole game, and that's not a good way to play Durant. So he will devour for 2 the first turn, and he's going to start struggling to get those Durants out of his prizes. Now, the first card he does discard is that Zekrom, which is actually a really big deal. So that's going to be Michael's best way of actually taking on these Durants. Bolt Strike is a very efficient way to knock out Durants because you don't have to discard energy, and then eventually you'll be able to power up Outrage, so you can attack for 2 energy, and you don't really have to worry about Crushing Hammer, discarding your energy. So we do see a Lightning go on to Thunderous. He played Communication for it, and a Judge. So Judge can be a very disruptive card, even against decks like Durant that play a lot of supporters. Anytime you go to 4 cards, it's very dangerous. You could just draw a bunch of junk and not really recover from it. So most people have gravitated towards N at this point because it's better later on in the game. However, Judge is still a very strong card, so we'll see what happens. And Michael will decide to use Charge instead of going for Eek here. He wants to put the pressure on very early, so he's just going to take a look through his deck again. And there we go, we got 2 Lightning and the Thunderous, and right away Jason is under pressure. Now this is an interesting decision that he wouldn't try to maybe set himself up before he would go aggressively like this, but maybe he figures, alright, there's 2 Durants prized, I'm just going to go as aggressive as possible, knock out these Durants, and just try to get a free win. Hopefully he just knocks out so many Durants so quickly that Jason can't really get them out of his prizes in time to really devour effectively. And if that's the case, it's going to take forever for Jason to devour 2 cards at a time. So these Rotom Mischievous Tricks are going to be very big, and we'll see what happens. So he did Mischievous Trick the one that's closest to his left hand, so we'll see. He'll probably use Mischievous Trick again, but actually he uses N first. He had a decision whether or not he wanted to use Mischievous Trick and then Collector to see if he got the Durant, or he could just play an N, get a fresh hand, and then Mischievous Trick and see if he gets the Durant next turn. So, interesting decision to refill his hand. That's actually kind of going to bail Michael out of this situation, because now he gets a new hand of 6, And he also gets that Super Rod, which is a very big deal. He can get the Zekrom out of his discard pile. So, a major swing of events here. And we'll just see what Jason got. A Crushing Hammer. Well, speak of the devil. See if he gets a heads. And yep. So I was going to say Crushing Hammer will prevent Thundurus from using Disaster Volt this turn, which is a pretty big deal. It sets back Thundurus by a turn. And this is one of the reasons why Thundurus actually is not very good against Durant. Disaster Volt forces you to discard energy every time you use it. And especially now with this Eviolite, even using Disaster Volt won't even knock out a Durant. But when you use Disaster Volt, you go down to 2 energy because you have to discard one, and then a Crushing Hammer discards another one, meaning that you actually can't attack again. So, Thundurus, not the greatest card in the world against Durant, but he's a quick attacker, so Michael just decided to go for him. Now we have another Mischievous Trick. We don't know if the first Mischievous Trick got a Durant back into Jason's deck, because Michael played that Judge. So Jason actually does not know if there's a Durant in the deck or not. We will find out eventually, but he doesn't really know. So there's another Devour for 2. And Michael really doesn't have an energy or anything, but he does have that Super Rod, and yeah, he's going to go for that. He really wants that Zekrom back in the deck, and he's going to get 2 Lightning and a Zekrom. Shuffle those in, and then probably play a Collector to get it. And we'll see. He's got a Collector or a Judge. He's got a decision to make. He doesn't have an Eelektrik in his hand, but he decides to go for the Judge. Interesting choice. He didn't have an energy this turn, so maybe he's thinking he wants to attach energy every turn. Otherwise, he's just going to fall way too far behind and not be able to take 6 prizes in time. So, he also prevents Jason from knowing, once again, whether or not there's a Durant in his deck now. Both times that Jason has used Rotom's Mischievous Trick, he hasn't been able to see what the top card was, so he doesn't know if there's a Durant in his deck still. There still could be 2 prized. He actually has no idea. And that'll be interesting to see if he finds out. So, Michael does get a Dynamo now. He's just going to use Charge again because he really didn't get anything off that. He didn't get an energy. And now we'll see what happens. Looks like he ripped a sleeve. So he's going to go ahead and change that. One of the unfortunate parts of the game is that you can rip your sleeves. But there we go. He fixed that very quickly. He had him on hand. Always a lesson for you. Please, when you go to tournaments, bring extra sleeves with you so you don't delay the whole tournament when a sleeve breaks like that. Because they do break, and it's just a part of playing with cards and shuffling. So, now we get to see what exactly Jason has. I can't really get a good view of his hand. I do see an Eviolite. I don't know what else is in there. But he needs a supporter. I don't know if he has one or not. That'd be pretty unfortunate. But like I said before, Judge can really mess with you. It's actually messed with both players here. And we'll see. I can't tell if there's a supporter or not. He just keeps shuffling those 2 cards back and forth. So there's another Eviolite. He might have to... yeah. Well, I mean, he's going to Mischievous Trick this turn for sure. He needs to keep doing that because he does not know still if there are Durant in his prizes. He knew there were 2 prized, so odds are there's still 1 in there at least. So he's going to keep using Mischievous Trick. He will go for Junk Arm here, getting rid of Lost Remover. And a second card. Ooh, a Metal Energy, special metal actually. And he's going to go for that Crushing Hammer again. See if he gets it. Nope, Tails this time. He really wanted to prevent... oh, it looks like he's using Mischievous Trick on one of the prizes he's already done, which is kind of interesting. He has not seen his deck still, so that's kind of a curious thing to do. Not sure why he went for that one instead of a different prize, but maybe he's smarter than me. There's a good possibility of that, and there's something I just don't know. So, right now Michael will play that Collector to get the Zekrom out of his deck, because that is the big attacker that he'll need to win this game. Now, Jason does have 1 card in his hand, so we don't know what that is. Apparently it's not a supporter, at least not one he can play. It might be a Twins, in that case, this would make a little sense. But if that's a twins, he's got to wait for Michael to take a prize, and he's not going to have anything unless he top decks it. So these next couple turns are going to be big. Michael will go for an Eelektrik. He has a switch in his hand, so immediately this isn't a problem to have the Eelektrik in play. So he can put that down and start powering up Zekrom. It's probably going to be his goal here. So we will see Dynamotor. Yep, right onto Zekrom. Like I said, Zekrom is the big attacker in this matchup. And I'm surprised he didn't use Eek here. He really needs to start attaching energy from the hand. So I'm surprised that he actually went ahead and used Charge again. I don't think Thunderous is going to help him too much. Now with those EV lights out there, Disaster Volt only does 60. So I'm kind of curious as to why he decided to just use Charge again and not just retreat to Cleffa and use Eek. He would be drawing cards from his deck, sure, but he needs energy to attach from the hand. Otherwise, he's just going to fall behind, and it's going to get ugly pretty fast. So here we see another Mischievous Trick. Once again, I'm not sure why Jason decided to use Mischievous Trick on the same prize he already did. Maybe that was just an accident. I don't see any benefit to doing that, but we'll see. So there's another Devour, and still no energy from Michael, so he's got another decision to make here. He will Dynamotor for sure, but does he want to retreat in Eek or just use Disaster Volt? And looks like he will decide to Disaster Volt for 60, which is not the most effective use of his resources, but hey, he's doing what he can. Now, if Jason were using Devour for 4 every turn, I would say, wow, Michael has no shot at winning this game. He's just being too slow about knocking out these Durants. However, since Jason's only been devouring for 2, he's not under that much pressure. I mean, if he lets this happen for a while, yeah, it's going to be bad, but he's slowly powering up that Zekrom. He will have it available to him next turn with a Bolt Strike or even an Outrage for a knockout, but actually you would opt to use Bolt Strike just so you could damage yourself to Outrage later. So I'm not sure what Michael's plan is here. I mean, he's going the route where he just gets an Eelektrik out and then attacks with his big basic Pokemon. It's the simplest, most straightforward way to beat Durant. The only thing you have to worry about is Eelektrik getting Catchered out and stuck. But if you have enough switches, that actually doesn't matter. And eventually you can get enough energy on Eelektrik to keep retreating it. That is his plan, it would seem. However, Thunderous really not getting the job done. He's actually been slow. I have to wonder if Michael would have just went for Zekrom straight away, if it would have been better. But I guess it did get discarded early on, so he didn't really have a choice. I'm not really sure if Thunderous ever will be a good card to have in this matchup, but we'll see. So right now he's actually going to Disaster Volt once again. I don't know if I agree with this, because honestly Thunderous isn't going to be useful. He needs to just start using Zekrom and Bolt Striking, because that's going to be the best way. You can't keep discarding energy with Disaster Volt, and this way, if he would have retreated and used Bolt Strike with Zekrom, or even Outrage, Bolt Strike would have been better, but he could have attached the energy to the Eelektrik, making Catcher a little weaker. He would have had an energy on there, so he could retreat if he would get Catchered. Now the problem that comes up here is when you have 1 energy on your Eelektrik, and you think you're safe if you get Catchered, because you can just attach 1 energy, retreat, and you're good. The problem comes when there's a Catcher, and then Crushing Hammer discards your energy on your Eelektrik, so that you can't retreat. This situation could definitely come up. Jason did have that Twins in his hand, so we're finally seeing him get something here. But honestly, with such a small hand, I'm not sure what he could go for here. I'm sure one of the cards he's taking is a Professor Juniper, just so he can get enough cards in his hand to start doing things. maybe he took a revive. He does have a catcher, maybe he took that. And alright, there is a revive. And he finally got a Durant out of his prizes, so that was a pretty big deal. And he's going to catcher for Eelektrik. Let's see what else is in his hand. Looks like I did see a Juniper in there, but I'm not too sure. We'll find out next turn, I guess. And we're going to see Eelektrik up there in a Devour for 3. Now, this is something Michael can get out of. So he's going to see... Alright, there we go. There's a switch. Send out Zekrom. And we're going to see a Dynamotor as well. Yep, put it onto Eelektrik. So eventually he's just trying to get it so there will be no catcher targets on his field for Durant to buy a turn. He is down to 4 prizes now. Not sure how many cards are left in his deck, but it's going to get scary pretty quickly. Jason will use Mischievous Trick again, so I'm going to assume the 4th Durant was that last prize he just got. Here's a Crushing Hammer. There's a Heads, and he's got a Decision. Looks like, yep, here's this situation I was just talking about. He's going to remove the energy from Eelektrik, and if he gets a catcher this turn, Eelektrik could get stuck. We do know... Oh, maybe Michael got ahead of himself, but we'll see. Jason's still deciding whether or not he wants to discard from Eelektrik, or he could go for kind of a riskier play, which is try to remove both of the energy off of Zekrom. That way, he wouldn't be able to Bolt Strike this turn. If he were to catcher Eelektrik, or Crushing Hammer Eelektrik and then catcher it out, Michael could just have another switch, and then he's kind of in a bad position because of the Zekrom. And yep, he decides to go for it. Gonna Juniper for 7, so like I thought, he did grab the Juniper off the Twins last turn. He just didn't have enough cards to keep using Twins over and over. You know, Twins is great because you can play it, grab a card, and then grab another Twins, so the next turn you can just grab another card, another Twins, and you get to keep searching through your deck. But when you don't have many cards and your Durants keep getting knocked out every turn, sometimes you just need to take the Juniper so you can have more cards in your hand. You don't get to search for what you want, but you get to draw more stuff. Hopefully you draw into things you need. And looks like he's debating playing a Super Rod here. We'll wait to see if he does that. I don't know if he has a catcher in his hand. Now, if he does not have a catcher, that Crushing Hammer was absolutely wasted. Michael will just be able to Dynamotor once again onto that Eelektrik next turn, and really Jason just wasted a Crushing Hammer for nothing. So he would need the catcher this turn to really do anything. We'll see. Alright, there's another Crushing Hammer in Jason's hand, so next turn maybe he could get away with that. But here's a Victory Medal, there's a Tails, and a Heads, so we get to draw a card. So Victory Medal, if you flip 2 heads, you get to search for any card in your deck, and nope, there's a catcher, so alright, he does have it. He didn't have the energy until the Victory Medal, though, so that was a pretty big deal. Victory Medal, if you flip 1 heads and 1 tails, you get to draw a card. If you flip 2 tails, nothing happens. So we're going to see a Devour for 3, and Eelektrik is stuck active. We do know Michael has that switch in his hand, though, so that's a pretty big deal. And here's a switch. And now we're going to start to get in a position where, I'm not sure what Michael's doing here. I'm not a big fan of what he's doing. He might be scared of Cabalion later on, but I don't think this is the right way to go about this. He decides to Dynamotor to the Eelektrik and then Disaster Volt using his energy attachment on the Thunderous. But I think the better move here would have actually been to just switch to the Zekrom, Dynamotor, and attach to the Eelektrik, and then Bolt Strike again with Zekrom. Now this way, he is safe from any catcher and Crushing Hammer shenanigans, and we're going to see him go for it again here. Crushing Hammer, oh, Tails. Alright, so catching a break there, but if you have 2 energy on the Eelektrik, you're actually sort of immune to the catcher and Crushing Hammer combo that can trap your Eelektrik in the active spot. So Michael took sort of an unnecessary risk using Thunderous here, which I'm kind of scared could come back to bite him. But Jason does have a pretty small hand. You don't know what's going to happen next. And honestly, Michael looks in a pretty good position to win. I'm not sure how many cards are left in his deck, but he does have Ends and Junk Arms for Super Rod, I'm sure, left in his deck somewhere. I know he's got a Judge in his hand as well. So there will be ways to shuffle cards back into his deck. It's just a matter of, will he be able to attack for 3 straight Durant knockouts and win the game in 3 turns? Because there might be enough to last these 3 turns, but if Jason can buy a turn somehow, some way, then he might just be able to devour Michael's deck. So, really close game here, down to the wire. Neither player really got what they needed. We're going to see another Twins out of Jason. So certainly is going to catch her out the Eelektrik. And he's actually going to go for a Crushing Hammer as well. I'm not sure what else is in his hand. It didn't look like there was actually much. So we could see something where he actually wasn't able to devour this turn. That would be kind of a big deal. But he might prioritize just bringing Eelektrik up and hitting a Crushing Hammer on it, not allowing Michael to retreat. Maybe he's thinking, okay, Michael's played 2 switches already. I think he may have devoured 1 or 2 Junk Arms by now. So odds are he probably doesn't have a Junk Arm for that switch. If that's the case, Crushing Hammer can keep that Eelektrik in place for a turn, and then next turn he can continue to use Devour. Basically all he needs to do here is try to lock Michael down and make sure he doesn't get knocked out 3 turns in a row. So here's 1 Crushing Hammer. There's a Heads. That'll go on the Eelektrik. And Eelektrik gets catchered up. See, this is what I was worried about. Michael would have just used both the energy attachment and the Dynamotor to put 2 energy on Eelektrik, and then just use Bolt Strike again with Zekrom. Then that would have been... Oh, there's a Judge. I have to question that Judge there. I'm not too sure why he did that, but yeah, actually I know why. The energy got removed, so I apologize for that. He has to Judge here, which is unfortunate because he's giving Jason a new hand. We didn't know if Jason really had anything, but anyway, if he would have just attacked with Zekrom and left 2 energy on the Eelektrik, this wouldn't have been a problem. Unless, of course, Jason hit 2 Crushing Hammers, which is very unlikely. So I'm not actually sure why he attacked with the Thunderous last turn. Maybe he's afraid of something that we're just not aware of, but I'm not sure. We'll have to see. So he's going to use Dynamotor to power up Thunderous again, and he's going to have to pass. So that was a pretty big turn. Jason bought himself some time, and the Judge actually gave gave Jason a new hand, meaning he can refill his hand, maybe get some stuff here, and he's going to go right for that Crushing Hammer, and woof, another head. So Eelektrik is going to be stuck there for a while, unless Michael can draw into a Junk Arm. This is really bad now. This is one of the dangers that can happen. He does have that Sage's Training in his hand, but that's not really something you want to use against Durant. Jason does have a Juniper. He gets a Revive, and things are suddenly looking good for Jason. We have 3 Durants out. The Eelektrik is kind of stuck up there. And, you know, what was looking good for Michael, I think that one turn kind of really bit him in the butt. If he just had 1 extra energy on that Eelektrik, we probably wouldn't be in this situation. Hard to tell, but I really think that backfired. And, ooh, there goes a Junk Arm. So that's got to be painful. And, I mean, you really don't want to use Sage's Training here, but you kind of have to. He's going to look at his top 5, hoping for and not getting a Junk Arm. And this game might be over at this point. That is a pretty devastating top 5. He does not see any catcher to buy a turn. He does not see any Junk Arm to get a switch. And he doesn't even get an energy, which is a pretty big deal. Yeah, it's just not looking pretty. So he's going to Dynamotor again, doesn't really help him at all, but his deck is starting to get a little thin. Jason's starting to get more options in his hand. He'll probably get a 4th Durant out now. The 4th one is in his deck because he played a Super Rod to get it before. So, what seemed to be a strong position for Michael really seems like it has turned around completely, and Jason looks like he is favored to win the game. Yeah, just going to count along. Looks like there's 10 or 11 cards left in Michael's deck. He's not going to be able to survive 3 turns if Jason could get all 4 Durants out. So really that Eelektrik got stuck. There's really nothing he can do about it. See if he can find a way out. He does have that N in his hand to shuffle cards back in. But the problem is, can he get Eelektrik out of the active spot? And I don't really know. It has that 2 retreat cost. This is really the downside of Eelektrik. You know, it's a very good card. The ability is amazing. Dynamotor is probably one of the best abilities in the game. But when he gets stuck up there, this can happen, and your opponent can really buy a lot of time. So here is a collector. Jason's going to get that 4th Durant. And one of the other things he can do, oh, he does grab Cabalion as well, but one of the other things he can do is kind of search through his deck and check to see what his prizes are. And every time he uses Mischievous Trick, he can see which card got put from his prizes into his deck and which card from his deck went into the prizes. And you can kind of do some tricks where you can see which card is which prize. That way you can put cards on top of your deck that you need. You have to have very good memory for this and look through your deck and pay very close attention, but it certainly can happen where you can figure out what went where, and then say if there's a twins in your prizes that you really need, you can get that on top of your deck and you know, maybe get a crucial card that you needed that probably wouldn't have been on top of your deck. So you can kind of control what cards you draw if you look through your deck enough times and you have good enough memory. So we do see Michael plays a catcher here. Probably bring out Rotom. Actually, it's an interesting decision. You probably actually go for a Durant here because you want to trap a Durant in the active position. But if you bring up Rotom, you make him retreat and waste the energy to retreat. And here's an N. It's not looking good for Michael. His deck is really small. Even if he gets the energy to retreat, and then, yeah, I actually don't know why he would choose to catch out the Rotom at this point. I would actually prefer to go for a Durant. That way, if you get an energy to retreat, you can just, well, he does get a junk arm, so he can switch. But I was going to say, if you get an energy to retreat or the switch here, you can knock out a Durant instead of a Rotom. But even if you didn't get the energy, and Jason doesn't have an energy, then a Durant is trapped there. You really don't gain anything by knocking out a Rotom because, well, Rotom doesn't help Devour. If he did, that would be a little ridiculous. So, basically, Jason's going to need 1 more energy and he'll win the game so he can Devour twice. Because Michael's deck is pretty small. It's down to about 6 at this point. So a Devour will bring him down to 2. And then another Devour will get rid of his deck. And there's really not much he can do about it. He will be able to get 2 straight knockouts, but really nothing he can do about it. And Jason's got twins, so there's really no way for him to prevent Jason from winning at this point. It's unfortunate. Just that 1 or 2 turns that Eelektrik was stuck in the active spot was the difference. You know, you gotta think back to that 1 turn where he just decided not to attach 2 energy to the Eelektrik, thinking he was safe with 1, and then the Crushing Hammer got him. It might have been different if he had 2 energy on it, but you never know. Jason could have hit 2 Crushing Hammers, and then we wouldn't be having this conversation anyway. But that was probably the turning point in the game. That was the turn where Jason was able to buy time and start devouring Michael's deck. And you can see he is actually going to win by 1 turn. So you can see how technical things get when you're playing against Durant. Every single turn counts. Every single card in your deck counts. And even little things like using Charge that could come back and haunt you later. Here we go. Here's a Devour for 4, and there's actually that Junk Arm. That could have been a big card for Michael to have, but he actually couldn't have played it anyway. So he's just going to scoop, knowing that Jason can Devour next turn. I was thinking he could Super Rod, but he actually doesn't have enough cards in his hand to Super Rod. But there we go. A very close game, decided by 1 turn. Jason will take that one, and we will move on to the deciding Game 3. We'll see if Jason can finish it out with Durant, or if the Thunderdome can take down Jason Klaczynski. And we'll see who wins the Davie Florida City Championship. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned for Game 3.